I've heard a lot of rumblings and even horrific stories from clients on the experiences they go through when not being fully tax compliant in South Africa, ranging from multiple demands by SARS to threats of being blacklisted in South Africa. And the example you've mentioned just demonstrates once again that being tax compliant applies to all taxpayers who are registered for tax.
Right. Welcome to the Tax Consulting South Africa, Two Guys Talking Tax on a Tuesday podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by my colleague, Delano Abdoll. He's our legal manager for cross-border tax. And today we'll be discussing the technicalities and nuances of seizing tax residency for South African expats who are abroad and obtaining dual citizenship in a foreign country abroad. Thank you, Delano.
Thank you for having me, Richan. I think it's a great opportunity, as you mentioned, two guys talking tax, and there's certainly a lot of tax to talk about.
Certainly. Now, Delano, in your experience, what is the difference or the link or the similarities between tax residency in South Africa for individuals and citizenship?
The first thing I can say is it's a very common question, and I'm not an immigration attorney, but the way I like to explain it is Home Affairs has a building and SARS has a building.
Right.
And when we are in the Home Affairs building, we can think of citizenship or nationality as a status in the Republic of South Africa.
Right.
When we are in the SARS building, we speak specifically about our status from a tax residency perspective.
Right.
So the two are really different insofar as immigration and tax statuses are concerned.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, referring to the Department of Home Affairs migrant profile report, the UN has their own migrant profile report. And whilst there's some variance between the two, we can safely say there's roughly about 1 million South Africans that are residing abroad, with many of them having applied for and obtained citizenship and legal status in their foreign host country abroad. Now, in cases where they now hold dual citizenship between South Africa and a foreign country, what is the effect of that on their tax residency status and potentially them applying to seize their tax residency status in South Africa?
So I think that's a very convoluted question. So I'm just going to break it down in some small bits, and we take it from there. So we know that one can update their status in South Africa with SARS from a resident taxpayer to a non-resident taxpayer. And the two avenues that one can use is either the process of a double taxation agreement,
Right.
which colloquially means breaking tax residency on a temporary basis. Alternatively, you can do so on a permanent basis, which we refer to as financial immigration. And what is key to deciding which avenue to approach is what is the taxpayer's intention insofar as breaking their tax residency is concerned. Now,
Right.
some South African nationals who go abroad do so in the aim of obtaining dual citizenship
Right.
to whatever country they go to. Maybe even obtaining a green card status, for instance, in the United States of America. A different example is maybe permanent residency status in Australia. So the taxpayers who go abroad in these cases, they actually have a 5 to 10 year plan already as to what they are trying to achieve by virtue of their relocation. One could say that a reason for this is they would like to obtain a passport a foreign passport that at least is a lot stronger in terms of its global rankings compared to South Africa.
Right.
So there are a number of countries, should they achieve this dual citizenship status, that they can then enter visa-free. And perhaps this is also a plan for their kids. Maybe their kids could also get uh, foreign passports, which then allow them to also travel globally visa-free, depending on what country you choose. Now, deciding to retain your South African citizenship is often a very emotional decision because
Certainly.
one identifies their nationality as a very strong connection to the country. You can certainly, though, update your status with SARS from a resident to a non-resident whilst retaining your South African citizenship and having citizenship abroad.
Right.
There's certainly no legal basis to deny a taxpayer in updating their tax residency status by virtue of them holding dual citizenship. I will add one last comment is that there are, for instance, countries abroad where it is a requirement that you would need to relinquish your initial citizenship or nationality status in order to become a citizen or national in that foreign country.
Right.
So those are the type of dynamics we're working with when talking about immigration status and tax status in the context of South African tax residency.
Right. Now, when expats elect to cease their tax residency with the South African Revenue Service, what are the implications of them doing so?
I think one immediate implication is that in the year that they cease their tax residency status, they will need to ensure that their tax return for that year of assessment is filed accordingly. I often refer to this as a split return because what it means is that in the year of cessation, the taxpayer will need to declare their income as a resident from the beginning of the year of assessment up until the day prior to them becoming a non-resident as confirmed by SARS, and from the date on which they've become a non-resident as confirmed by SARS till the last day of the year of assessment, they will need to declare as a non-resident. So this is particularly important with SARS's recent enhancements on eFiling profiles, where taxpayers will need to complete 2 separate wizard questionnaires confirming which portion is to be filed as a resident and which portion is to be filed as a non-resident.
Right. That certainly sounds quite technical and complicated.
I think it certainly is a technical and complicated aspect of complying with your tax obligations in South Africa, but particularly because it is not something which taxpayers are accustomed to.
Right.
So now that it's mandatory to ensure that each year of assessment is correctly declared under the correct tax residency status, this makes it particularly important for taxpayers to consult with an advisor who's
Right.
practiced in the area, because it's not so much your first tax return, which is the complex one. The complex part comes in as to when will your next split return be.
Right.
And not every taxpayer understands the mechanics of South Africa's very robust South African tax residency laws, which will dictate how to do that at the right time and to do it in the correct fashion.
Right. Now, in your experience in recent times, have you seen SARS clamping down or looking more closely at expats abroad? And reason why I ask is recently there was the conviction and sentencing of Skalkberger Senior, an old former Springbok rugby player who hadn't filed tax returns for many years. And SARS handed over the case to the National Prosecuting Authority for criminal prosecution. Now, have you seen something similar with expats that perhaps leave the country and don't file tax returns? Or is that something that you think SARS will perhaps focus more closely on moving forward?
Look, I've heard a lot of rumblings and even horrific stories from clients on the experiences they go through when not being fully tax compliant in South Africa, ranging from multiple demands by SARS to threats of being blacklisted in South Africa. And the example you've mentioned just demonstrates once again that being tax compliant applies to all taxpayers who are registered for tax.
Right.
So by neglecting your obligations, which are legal in their very nature, one can anticipate or expect SARS to follow whatever avenues necessary to collect the tax that is legally due to them.
Right. Now, for an expat that is seeking to be tax compliant and rest assured that their affairs are in order with SARS, what steps can they proactively take to ensure that that is the case?
I think a good initial step is getting a bird's eye overview of what your historic, current, and future tax obligations are.
Right.
This then allows a taxpayer to have a holistic roadmap as to ensuring no stone is unturned historically. They can tailor the filing position to their current needs. And again, to our first conversational point on perhaps aiming towards dual citizenship, they can understand then what do their future tax returns look like up until a certain point, and whether they would like to cease residency in South Africa, which they are legally entitled to do should they meet the requirements.
While still maintaining their South African citizenship.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. Now, moving forward, what would you say are some pitfalls or some common mistakes that expats make when they embark on this process that you have encountered perhaps?
I think one of the pitfalls is not approaching their South African tax affairs from a perspective of being SARS verification ready. So whatever steps they take, they must keep in mind that the burden of proof will always be on them as a taxpayer,
Right.
and being document ready is perhaps the best way to approach your tax returns on a year-to-year basis with SARS, particularly if you're an expat, because you want to ensure that you can record the facts of your relocation and that you can record your earnings abroad, as well as perhaps paying tax on those foreign earnings.
Right.
These are the type of questions that SARS might raise in a verification process, which is not only related to ceasing tax residency, but SARS is entitled to open any of your tax returns for verification and ask questions. Again, the burden of proof then rests on the taxpayer. So I think in many instances, I've seen clients who are in the unfortunate position of having a lost passport because where they try to backdate their cessation of residency application, so many years have passed
Right.
that it becomes particularly difficult to demonstrate that they relocated in years as early as 2001, for instance.
Right.
And not having those documents on hand is often what leaves your tax position susceptible to heavy SARS scrutiny,
Right.
including contracts. So I know expats who go abroad might not always secure a permanent employment contract. So for those who perhaps relocate for a fixed term contract subject to renewal, I would encourage them to always keep a copy of their employment contract, as well as any addendums and amendments made to that contract, so that they can record their employment history abroad.
That's prudent advice. And that's all that we have for today. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Until next time. Thank you, Delano.
Thank you, Richan.